So
Well, with liquor bars, I mean, it was all tobacco, and of course,
yep.
all those buildings has been reconverted into living quarters and/or businesses, like American Tobacco, which is that whole situation down there is fantastic, as far as the all the businesses that are located in the American Tobacco building. These are all liquor bars. I mean, when that first came on the scene, uh, where West Village was the first one that got developed, and that actually involved, Brian Davis and Christian Laettner, and they got that going very good. They were going to take over some of the other buildings, but they had some financial constraints and looked for some other money, and then things happened. Another person came in, and they're there now, and they're developing the rest of that whole property, which is real good. And in that property, in the Big Liquor Mars property, if you ever go in there, I mean, they've got 6 or 7 major companies that are actually entrepreneurial type companies, which is fantastic. And there's what that creates too is more walk traffic, and it's good for, like you say, the restaurants that can survive.
Yeah.
With everything that's going on, there's a lot of difficult situation where even in this area right here, if you looked at Main Street and you looked at where Brightleaf Square is, every business has been a different name 5 times, except for me. So a lot of people go out of business because they don't stay with the times, or they don't. You got to be lucky. You got to have some staying power, and you got to sacrifice an awful lot. But right now, with obviously these 2 apartment complexes or townhomes opening up, with the old funeral home ones, and the one above it, which will be open, in 2019. This is supposed to be open at the end of December, and a lot of the developers come in here, and they told me to bring me over there and take a look at it. But when you look at a townhome, condo, whatever they are, I mean, if you look at a single, a studio, say it's 600, 700 square feet, it's about $1,400.
Yeah.
So the people that are moving in have to be making money.
Yeah.
Just like myself, and I'm fortunate I've been here a long time, but with a lot of sacrifice too. If you looked at just 5 years ago, if you looked at a radius of Durham and say a half a mile to 3/4 of a mile, there were maybe 25 to 28 restaurants, and/or private clubs, or whatever they want to say about them, serving liquor or beer. And right now there's 105.
Wow.
So
That's
right,
huge.
so you look at that, and that's competition. I mean, think about that. I mean, you look at Duke University competition. You got State, Carolina. I mean, 8 miles apart and 12 miles apart. There's competition, and when you have that many restaurants, you got to know what you're doing to stay in business, and hopefully good things happen, and you get your crowds. No matter if you're looking at millennials or whatever crowd that you're trying to get, you want to cross section it and try to get 3 or 4 different crowds, because one crowd won't maintain what you're trying to do. Well, I think one of the big things, just like myself, why I actually opened up here was when I went to school over there as a Duke football player on scholarship. Would always go to Chapel Hill because there wasn't anything in Durham. There was no options. So I tried to say, listen, I can make it an option. I don't know if I'll succeed. I might fail, could fail. There's not a lot of people doing anything down here. Let's see what happens. And that took a good 10 to 15 years for me to, hang in there long enough where I could make some money and put the money back in the business. And that was difficult. During that time, at least with myself, the people I hired were, during the off season because of the NCAA rules and regulations. I could hire some ball players if they were lucky enough to be in summer school. Where now everybody is required to be in summer school. So I try to get more of a Duke connection with the people that I knew over there, be it, the coaches and the varsity club, the other people that worked over there, and that helped to us helped to a great deal, a great degree. So I was lucky in one of those angles too, to make sure. And you had to branch out. Of course, we have sports, but every restaurant has TVs just to make sure they can keep people maybe a little bit longer. So everybody's kind of a sports bar in some way, shape, or form. Now, Duke, I mean,
Yeah.
with a connection with the athletic side, and then when you get more people from the administration side come down here, and when these businesses like across the street at Brightleaf Square on the top floor is the Duke Press, so they have probably 100, 125 people up there. Well, maybe 10 or 20 eat somewhere. Yeah, there's an option. They can come over here, and I get some of them, which is good. I hated that Satisfaction closed down. State Ellis was a good friend of mine. He drew an awful lot of people to the area. That hurt the whole area,
Really?
and because even at Divines, or I don't care if it's Statons, I don't care, whatever the restaurants in this area are, they can't go there every day. If you can go there a couple times a week, that's great. Or like Thursday nights, we get a lot of kids that come here, and then obviously there's a scenario with shooters too. So, there's different places where the students can go as long as they're safe, being taken care of. Yeah, I think the best thing is it's called diversity.
Yeah.
The more diversity there is, the better it is for everyone. So you get an opportunity with people coming in, whatever backgrounds they have, and I think that helps Durham out in a big way. And Duke is diverse too. I mean, if you look at 33% of incoming freshmen are Asian. When I was here, it was half of 1%.
Really?
So you think about that. I mean, and other ethnicities too. But that's good for Durham. So I think there's a bridge there, and I think both sides really, I mean, Duke's the largest employer. I mean, in Durham. I mean, there's got to be something to say about that. I mean, and we're fortunate to have Duke in Durham. So I think, from my perspective, it's changed for the better, and there's more people coming out from Duke and staying in Durham, and we get people coming from Chapel Hill and Raleigh to come to Durham. Well, before that's never happened. I think, what we'll face in Durham is once all these townhomes, condos, building apartments, once they get built out and everybody's living in them, I think our infrastructure has to be upgraded. But we can't get any wider streets because there's buildings right there. I think, when you look at 147 and they're bringing 70 across to hook into 147 to go to 40, that's all well and good, but that should have been done 10, 15 years ago and completed. So I think the infrastructure, when you look at growth, at some point, someone's going to have to say, we can't handle anything anymore. I mean, if you look at your reservoirs for water, just to have water piped in for all these condos, and somebody's got to be thinking about that. And it's getting big, and if you look at Atlanta with all the suburbs that actually merge into Atlanta, it's a traffic nightmare. And of course, you guys, I don't know if you've been out on 40, even 147, talk about 4:30, 5 o'clock, forget it.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So, people got to think about that. That's where they've been dabbling, and they've been looking at this light rail coming from Chapel Hill through Durham. Who knows how far they get to Raleigh, but just say from the Durham to the Chapel Hill area, for people moving around, that certainly can help. You know, the price point on that, you know, I heard anywhere from, I don't know, it's billions of dollars. Is that cost prohibitive, or it's obviously the federal government will have to help out in building that infrastructure. So yeah, I mean it's ramped up, been ramped up for the last 5, 6, 7 years, and you know, where you're going to, well, like you say, even if you go downtown or wherever you want to go in the 4 districts, since now they're called districts, Brightleaf Square, the Warehouse District, American Tobacco District, and Downtown District, you know, where can you park? So, you know, of course, they're building a couple more parking decks. This one up here, when they're building, you know, a structure for housing, it contains a parking deck. So they can at least have the people that live there be able to park there. You know, I mean, there's a lot of challenges out there. The big thing for, you know, restaurants and all of us is, you know, obviously there's a lot of competition out there. So you might have to be in a position where you do more with less. You know, because you're going to have to pay your bills and you got to figure out what you have to do. You know, but traditionally, Durham has been in an anti-inflation area where things are reasonable. You know, so. So, you know, I'm fortunate. I'm still alive. We got a lot of great people that come in here, and my demographics is all over the place. You know, from 21-year-olds up to 65. So you know, we can we're fortunate we have those demographics. You know, and a lot of that to me is the sports end, since we have most of the packages, and you know, if you look at what's going on with college basketball, I mean, what a great area to be in if you really look at that, and that's great for us. You know, and people come down, they root on, and you know, and then they can look at that up there. Go to El Carolina.
Awesome.
But the thing is a lot of people don't know. When I played here, let's say when Bobby played here, he knew the ball players in Carolina and State, and heck, God, we knew them well. You know, so we went over there. They were friends of ours. I mean, it's the fans that, you know, put that, you know, those attitudes in place. You know. But I mean, it's a great area. And, you know, we just want to keep on being able to do a great job and not get caught up in the times. And you got to change an awful lot too.
Yeah.
And so you got to think about changes, be it menu ideas, kitchen ideas, upgrading. You know, I mean, that's what I think about all the time. And if I can, you know, if I can stay with the times that way, it's great. So,
awesome.
So I'm fortunate, you know, and Duke's been fantastic, and Durham, I think, Durham and Duke, I think they're probably working the best they've ever worked.
Perfect.
So.
You know, coming here was very different. It was the pines, and you know, the air smelled differently, and it was you know, this was country. This was maybe how Long Island used to be back in the 30s and 40s and 50s. And so, you know, in my time here, you know, I've just seen a tremendous amount of development, not only downtown, but certainly on the outskirts. You know, in terms of you know, residential and business-wise. Well, I think that you know, one of the things that was always obvious about Durham when I first started here was because of the heavy influence of Duke, not only as a university but the hospital itself. It seemed like almost everybody was from somewhere else. I think I read somewhere where 50% of the population from Durham did not grow up in Durham. So it's everybody. You know, people were from New Jersey, they were from Michigan, they were from New York. Some to escape the climates, you know, some to escape maybe the high taxes, to look for a better way of life, or some just for the profession, their particular professions, healthcare. But now, you know, the incubator, you know, startups that are happening in downtown Durham, which have really attracted a lot of young people. The housing, I think, is attracting young people. The cost of living is attracting probably young couples and young families to say that this is a place you can afford You don't need both husband and wife, working 60 hours a week to be able to afford to live here. You can get more. You can get larger homes. You can get bigger backyards. You can get more space, and your lifestyle is a lot. I won't say slower. I don't think that's the right term, but it's a lot more conducive, to a quality, a quality way of life. Well, I think that Duke's involvement everywhere you turn in Durham, you'll see a Duke sign. Whether it's Duke Medicine or there's business offices or Brightleaf, or business offices or downtown, or there's or over at the American Tobacco Campus. There's something that says Duke, on there. So obviously, in terms of the infrastructure and the tax implications, Duke does a tremendous job. In terms of, Duke's involvement, for me, certainly it would be athletics, but it's also the arts, between the National Museum and performances and music. There's a lot of people that I think are attracted who are not Duke employees or not Duke students, but who come to Duke, to visit the different venues, whether it's Cameron Indoor or Wallace Wade or Koskinen Stadium, or it's any of the performing arts that are on campus, or lectures. I think that's a big part of it. It could be a Sunday church service, at the Divinity, the chapel, or it could be the Catholic Center, that people are attracted to, or the Freeman, right? The Freeman Jewish Center. It's hard for students, I think, to have an impact on a place, because students are busy enough. They're busy, trying to learn their craft. They don't have a lot of free time, and I think the free time is maybe about spending money. Spending money in restaurants or spending money. It does give the town a younger, more vibrant feel, where there's a lot of new ideas and different things to try. But I think, other than the economic influence that students can have, and with some community service projects that fraternities, sororities, athletic teams, do perform, it is hard for students to make that kind of impact. Sure. I think, when I first arrived here in the summer of 2006, I was looking for ways, simple ways, for the Duke athletic, lacrosse community to get involved. What makes sense, here on campus, and the Ronald McDonald House is on campus. It's on central campus, and it's not some place where we have to go too far to. It's a place that provides a tremendous service for a population of people who just don't have a lot. They have so much on their plate emotionally, financially. They have huge burdens, and it's a place that can allay a few of their anxieties. And for us to go once a month, to buy, prepare, cook, clean, it just makes a lot of sense. And then we're there for them if they need any other help. So they know that they can call us, and we can, pretty much at a moment's notice, we can find 8, 10 guys who would be free or available to do, pretty much anything they ask us to do. But it just made sense for us since it is here on campus. There's a big part of me that I'm still an outsider, that I'm still, because I've only been here for 12 years, and so I still feel a little bit that I don't really understand fully the history, but I have seen the explosion of the growth, the infrastructure, of downtown. When I was first here, you would never really go downtown for anything. You wouldn't go down there for restaurants. You wouldn't go down there. You wouldn't go down for anything. But the infrastructure was there. The brick, the cement, the light posts. It was a nice feel. The architecture was old, but there was some charm to it. It wasn't any different from really New York City in terms of if you looked at the architecture and you looked at some of the buildings and you said, wow, this has got potential. Now, I'm probably in the wrong profession, kick myself in the butt. I could have made some money, I think, if I, was a little smarter. but, or if I was in a different field, but you saw the potential of downtown. Now, with all that being said, with the change, going from tobacco, back to when, the 50s, 60s, I guess, and 70s when it stopped, and then you see the great explosion downtown. I think the thing that I would be a little bit concerned about is growing too fast and getting too large, because the other services that are necessary, roads, parking. Last night, I went to a restaurant after the Ronald McDonald House, and I had to work really hard to find a parking spot, where I never had to do that before. I could just kind of park near the restaurant and then kind of walk in. So there are those simple things that we took for granted when we first moved in here. When I first lived, I lived right across from campus, and the lofts where Dunkin' Donut is on Irwin, that building didn't exist. Trinity didn't exist. Those buildings didn't. That was just open space. And so you see a little bit of the traffic, you see a little bit of the population, and you do see a change. And I think a lot of us were attracted to this place because it was a little bit gentler. It was a little bit. And so as long as it's done with some foresight, and people are looking at that, and it doesn't take away from the essence of the place. But we do have the Performing Arts Center, we do have the Durham Balls, downtown, we do have Duke. Again, it's really, we've got the best of pretty much everything.
Back then, two totally separate places. If you, as a Duke student, there was really no reason to go downtown. But it just for one, there was really no reason. Also, you always heard it was never very safe. So as a Duke student, you pretty much stayed on campus. A couple of food spots, 9th Street, but you never went downtown like you do now.
And then now, would you say that's changed?
Completely different. I lived downtown. I guess it was a matter of safety back then. Not only was there a reason, but it was also dangerous. Now, the restaurants, the apartments. When I was moving back down here, I wanted to live as close to downtown as I could, just because there's so much going on. I wanted to be walking distance. Yeah, so one, I think you're seeing more and more people who graduate from Duke who then stay down here. Yes, in Durham, but also having the Raleigh piece as well. Or do you want to keep this strictly Durham?
It doesn't matter.
All right, so now with all the tech stuff going on in Raleigh, either there's a lot of people who graduate from Duke UNC and stay down, or I have met a couple people either from Philly, New York, who lived up there, had opportunities to come down here, and also another piece, as to rewind a little bit, for coming down. New York City I loved it, but just so expensive. So I think you're seeing that the cost of living and everything else that's associated with it, but also the opportunities that are down here. And so, to your point, yeah, I've met some people around my particular apartment complex, my floor. Don't talk to a ton of people, just because I guess maybe the hours and the scheduling, just not too much besides hello. But in going out, I know some people over at the business school, and through that, I've met other people who just work in Durham. And yeah, it seems that there are more and more people who are coming down for the reasons I just said. The opportunity, and also the cost of living and the way of living, and it's becoming more and more attractive. Obviously strong, but I think to that point, I think the Duke and Durham connection, although students might not have gone downtown, Duke has always been a huge part of Durham. With obviously the school, the hospital, all the jobs it provides. I don't want to speak up, but if it wasn't for Duke, I don't know how much you'd hear about Durham. But because of the school and everything else, it's allowed to, it's had a very strong connection. Now, with all the businesses, not just restaurants and the funds, but the amount of businesses downtown. I forget what the office space is, but there's an office space downtown for startups where it gives you your lease is very inexpensive, but if you make it big, you have to, and you leave the office space, you then have to sign a 2 or 3 year lease somewhere in Durham. So it's allowing people to be down here and start companies, but then if you do make it big, it's encouraging you to stay down here. And so there's things like that that are helping to grow the opportunities and job base in Durham, which is pretty cool. So I think it's between that, because of that, I think now there's even a stronger connection where I don't know how much Duke students go downtown, but I know the graduate students are down there all the time, and that's where I think it's almost nice where the undergraduates still kind of stay where the undergraduates stayed, but now the young professionals and graduate students have a lot more options, whether for relaxing or work opportunities right there in Durham. I like it right now. I can tell you, I'm not. It's not. Some people were wondering, oh, you're gonna go down there, you're gonna miss the Northeast. I love living in the South. I keep saying the cost of living, the pace of living, the way people are. I do love New York and New Jersey, but if you walk by a random person and say, "Hey, what's up?" It's kind of like, whoa. Whereas down here, that's compass. You talk to the strangers, and it's just a different vibe, which I really like. And again, keep talking about how Durham it's only going to keep going. One City Center. I know the builders of One City Center are building another one not too far, I believe, across from Boulder Caves. And so there's a lot more things coming downtown where it's obviously Raleigh is ahead of us in terms of probably the economy and businesses that are there. But I don't know if Durham will ever get to that level. I don't know if Durham wants to. But it just seems like there's a lot of really cool and exciting things happening. You start to see, obviously downtown is as developed as it is, but you're starting to see the outskirts. So you can see kind of the plan for Durham to keep growing. But I think there's something unique to Durham where it still has that small town feel. I don't know if it's going to keep that. I don't know, because there's some Durham folk who are old time. Old time Durham, where even the idea of the downtown is probably not something. Not that they don't like it, but it's not their feel. It's not something they're into. But there are a lot of people in downtown Durham that are from here, and a lot of the stuff you go to the restaurants, it's all local food, or you go to the bars and it's local alcohol, local liquor from distilleries or breweries. So there is that. There's Bodega, which play on bodega in One City Center. It's all local. It's all local food, all drinks, alcohol, whatever it is. So in that regard, it's still got that feel to it. Obviously on a larger scale, but I don't know. I think that's a good question. I think in the next couple of years, it will still be able to keep the small town feel. But I'd imagine at some point it's going to get too big. People from out of town will see opportunities, and now, although they might want to try to come in and build and keep a small town feel to it and try to make it feel local, at a certain point, if it gets big enough, it's going to lose a little bit. Now, that's coming from me, who is, I certainly would consider myself a local. I went to school here. I just moved back last summer. But in my little over a year time down here, that's what I would say. Again, it's growing well. It's still got a small town feel to it. It seems like everybody kind of knows everybody. But at a certain point, if it keeps growing, I'd imagine you're going to start to lose that.
So after concluding our interviews, we talked through each one and we kind of looked at how unique each person's experience was that we interviewed, noting how long they had lived there, what exactly it is they were interested in when they talked. We left a lot of open-ended questions. So what they said was really just kind of what they wanted to talk about. We didn't really guide them as much as we just wanted to learn what they thought of Durham. And so there was a lot of uniqueness in each person in terms of what they talked about, but we also looked back through the interviews and we were able to determine and pinpoint what exactly the central themes were. And there were central themes that were within all three interviews. The first point being when we talked about the future of Durham, we learned that these three particular residents in Durham kind of were optimistic about the growth for the future, but had kind of a guarded optimism in terms of they didn't know whether the infrastructure would be able to hold up to the influx of people. And obviously, two of them being from New York, they've seen what breakdowns in infrastructure would mean for a city and how Durham could be very negatively affected. And that was something that all three people talked about. And Mr. Devine even brought up the light rail, which I thought was really interesting, that a resident would be very well informed with the light rail and infrastructure concerns.
Yeah, and kind of going off that, when Coach Danowski was talking about the lack of parking downtown, Gene Devine mentioned whether or not this growth would outpace sort of Durham's capacity for growth. So therefore, would this infrastructure, would the parking, would the transportation and the traffic, would this be able to keep up? Another point we found through our 3 interviews was that there was a stigma around downtown and essentially no reason to go to downtown Durham. This has obviously changed to the revitalization and gentrification of the downtown area and has brought new restaurants and other businesses. As Gene Devine and Ned Crotty mentioned when they were students here, there was really only a couple of businesses, and Gene Devine even said that he would often go to UNC when they were going out to a restaurant or for a night out. This has obviously changed now as there has been a new growth of an influx of businesses that have attracted people, so it's made Durham more of a destination and less of an area to shy away from.
So then another aspect or point that we found consistently throughout the 3 interviews we made was that Duke is an integral part of Durham and downtown Durham. Coach Danowski went through and talked about nearly every, especially back when he first got here, nearly every building had Duke associated with it. And I thought that was really interesting to see Duke's presence in building up the community into what it is now.
Yes, and he also mentioned the role that students play, although he did say it's hard for students to be kind of active in the community, helping out community service in that sense. They do offer a lot to the Durham community through just the influx of money that they bring, so they're able to support these variety of businesses that do come in. And Gene Devine even mentioned employing some of these Duke students, and the Duke students are mainly the consumers of a lot of these Durham businesses.
Through our 3 interviews that we conducted, we learned and heard about a lot of the positives that the residents that we talked to saw happening and have happened in Durham. And a lot of them were the positive impacts, but none of them really talked about the negative impacts. For us, we could only really remember Mr. Devine talking about the light rail system and talking about how cost effective it might be. And obviously with infrastructure concerns, they all 3 had those, but none of them really kind of talked about the residents as much as we did in class. We thought that was really interesting, and we think it's kind of the result of an underreporting of it. I don't think a lot of residents outside those being directly affected really know about the negative impacts that all this change in Durham is having.
Yeah, and not only that, the What's Up Durham class is giving us a unique opportunity to learn about these variety of inequalities. And generally among our the 3 people we interviewed, they generally see growth as a good thing because they see all the positive, the things that kind of hit you in the face. Like initially when you come to Durham, you see like the skyline, you see new restaurants, you see a bunch of different positive aspects, and you don't see the things that are constantly being pushed to the side, such as the gentrification of residents. And they view the growth overall as a good thing, which is something that we have to kind of take with a grain of salt, as we know there's many negatives that come with this growth. So to summarize, the 3 individuals that we interviewed had the same encouragement for the growth of Durham in the future. However, they saw that this needed to be a checked growth, as to Durham not to overgrow its boundaries, such as to the infrastructure and specific things like parking. The reason they were hesitant is because they didn't want Durham to lose its southern charm, as Ned Crotty specifically mentioned. However, they generally see this checked growth of Durham being a good thing for Durham and its residents.
So, based off of what they told us, what we've learned in class, we kind of discussed what we want to see for the future of Durham and how we see it going. And that is that we agree with them on checked growth. It needs to be monitored, but we think that the growing economy is great for Durham as long as it is monitored. And then, so what that means with checked growth, we think there should be increased public housing. It's something we talked about in class, and we've seen a decent amount in the news. Affordable housing would be huge because obviously, like Ned was saying, Ned Crotty was saying, that people are drawn to Durham because of the Southern charm, a slower pace of life, like Coach Danowski said. And so these residents are essential in keeping that, as well as keeping the community of Durham intact. So with monitors like having increased public housing and affordable housing, that will definitely help to keep that with the growth that Durham's having, as well as keeping it intact. And so we hope to see that in the future, that there's growth, but the people that made Durham attractive to all these people coming in get to stay and share in what comes through that growth.